Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chunky Studios. This is Jordan, and in today's video I'm going to be mainly discussing the potential for a few tropical systems to develop over the next couple of weeks, especially in parts of the tropical Atlantic and the eastern and central Pacific Oceans, as well as the potential for some significant catastrophic flash flooding and some potential for severe weather. Anyways, let's get straight into today's video. So first, I'm going to be talking about the severe weather threat. So today's outlook, we have a slight risk across much of North Dakota, and another slight risk of severe weather across portions of the northeastern United States, from mainly like the Philadelphia area through Boston. Here's our risk of tornadoes. We have a 2% risk of tornadoes across northeastern North Dakota and northwestern Minnesota. But we also have a 2% tornado risk across northeastern Kansas and extreme northwestern Missouri, where we could see a tornado or two today. Our wind threat is higher. We have a 15% wind threat for most of North Dakota, and then another 15% wind threat across parts of the northeastern United States. And then our hail threat today is pretty much lower, although we do have a 15% hail risk across central and eastern North Dakota, where we could see some hailstones up to golf ball size later today. And then we have a small 5% hail risk near the Denver area, where we could see some isolated large hail today. For tomorrow's outlook, we have a large marginal risk across much of the northern into the central plains, with another marginal risk across much of the Great Lakes area. No tornado risk for tomorrow yet, although we do have a wind risk in all of those areas, where we can see some isolated damaging wind gusts possibly reaching 60 to 65 miles an hour. And then your hail threat tomorrow is relatively low, although we do have a small 5% hail threat across southeastern North Dakota, north central South Dakota, and extreme northwestern Minnesota. And finally, your day 3 outlook, we have a large marginal risk of severe weather for much of North Dakota and all of Minnesota, most of Wisconsin, parts of the upper peninsula of Michigan, northern and northeastern Iowa, and northeastern South Dakota, where you could see some isolated severe thunderstorms on Sunday. And here are your probabilities, 5% in all those areas. And we have no outlooks for day 4 through 8 yet. We're all predictability too low, which means we could see outlooks issued in future days, but there's not enough confidence in the location and timing for any outlooks to be issued yet. Next, let's take a weather prediction center's excessive rainfall outlook. For today, we have a moderate risk of flash flooding across northeastern Kansas and northwestern Missouri. This includes some populated areas. This is because we're going to see a lot of rain and thunderstorms, and this is associated with a severe thunderstorm risk. We're including the potential for tornadoes and damaging winds with the flash flooding. So there could be times where you're under flash flood warnings and a tornado warning at the same time later today, so you need to make sure you're prepared for something like this to happen. Even our slight risk extends through much of Indiana and a lot of Illinois, and then extends all the way down to extreme north central Oklahoma. And we have a few other marginal risks. We have a marginal risk of flash flooding across parts of the Gulf Coast, from the western Florida Panhandle through southeastern Texas. We have a marginal risk across portions of Northern California, northwestern Nevada, and parts of south central Oregon, and then another one for much of eastern North Dakota and northwestern Minnesota. Tomorrow, our outlook is much less significant. Although we have multiple marginal risks, we have one marginal risk across much of the Ohio Valley into the northeast United States, another one from central and eastern North Dakota into northwestern Minnesota, then another one across much of the southern United States from the extreme western Florida panhandle through much of eastern Texas and even into southern Arkansas. And another marginal risk from northeastern California, northwestern Nevada, southeastern Oregon, and southwestern Idaho, where it could see some isolated flash flooding tomorrow. And then finally, for our day 3 outlook, we have a slight risk of flash flooding across much of northern Minnesota and a sliver of northwestern Wisconsin, where we could see some scattered flash flooding. And then we have a marginal risk for basically all of the upper peninsula of Michigan, much of northern Wisconsin, basically all of Minnesota, and a sliver of northeastern South Dakota and eastern North Dakota. We also have marginal risk across much of the northeast to the mid-Atlantic, and a marginal risk across much of western and central New Mexico and southeastern Arizona for Sunday. Next, looking at the National Hurricane Center, we have one outlined area here which does not look like it's going to develop. It's pretty much out of time at this point, and it really is going to impact land pretty soon. It could still bring some heavy rainfall, but it's not going to be a tropical depression, tropical storm, or anything like that. Next, looking at the Eastern Pacific, we obviously have this area of interest with a 30% chance of formation in 7 days. And that's what a lot of models have been showing, with a tropical storm or hurricane heading up towards the coast of Mexico, paralleling it there. And they finally outlined that area. Now going to the Central Pacific, we finally have something to look out for. 20% in 48 hours and 50% chance in 7 days of developing. I think at this point it's probably going to develop. It already looks pretty nice on satellite, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a tropical depression by early tomorrow. We're saying there's some gradual development of the system possible. It's developing, I think, pretty quickly. It already looks nice on satellite, and I don't think it's going to be long before it becomes a tropical depression. Oh wait, that's the wrong one. There it go. Here's what the Western Pacific looks like on the JTWC's website. We have Tropical Storm Comey, Tropical Depression Francisco, and Tropical Storm Croza. First, we're going to look at Croza, which you can see becomes a typhoon at just under 32 north. That's probably 31.5 north or so. This looks like it's going to curve away from Japan at this point. And it doesn't look like it's going to have any impact on that area. Although I will note, this is somewhat of a larger system, but it doesn't look like it's going to be close enough to really do anything in Japan. And right now its peak is forecasted to be a 75-mile-an-hour typhoon. Now looking at Komei. This is actually supposed to strengthen a little bit, but as it moves towards those islands there, east of Taiwan, and it's supposed to peak at 45 miles an hour as its second peak, and it could still bring some impacts to those areas there, especially with tropical storm force winds to those islands. So if you live on those islands, I would prepare for a tropical storm to come to your area soon. And finally, we have Francisco. Francisco's basically over. That's not really gonna do anything to land over in some heavy rainfall, really. No wind threat now. And it's gonna dissipate right before it hits China. But it's still going to bring some heavy rainfall. And I will show you why in a minute. So here's Croza. You can see it's developing pretty quickly. It looks much more like a tropical storm now. Here's Kome. You can see that it doesn't look as good as it was, but it is still tropical, I think, right now. Although it does look like it's starting to transition into either extratropical or a remnant low at this point. And then here's Francisco. So you can see Francisco, it still has a lot of clouds there. And it could still bring some heavy rainfall. It actually is right now to parts of China. And it's going to continue to bring some heavy rainfall, even with those little showers that develop on parts of it. And we have some more showers developing, so I'd watch out for that. Here's 97E. You can see that it looks pretty nice on satellite, and you can even start to see that it looks a lot like a tropical depression. It just doesn't have a defined area of circulation yet. That's why they haven't marked it as a tropical depression, really. And it also doesn't have a lot of sustained convection near the center. Now looking at the forecast models, we're going to look at there, then go to the Central Pacific first, and then we're going to do that. So you can see your area of low pressure over there, and the Euro has it becoming a tropical storm, and it has another area of low pressure behind it that is also a tropical storm. And it also has this third tiny area behind, in between both of them, that also becomes a tropical storm. So the Euro has 3 tropical storms within the next week in this area. Not even week, within the next few 5 days, I think that is. Then here's a GFS. You can see the GFS has this system and then another system. So this has 2 systems. And then there's this third system over there to the northeast of Hawaii, but also looks somewhat tropical, although that also could be remnants of a hurricane that formed farther back, it looks like. Here's a CMC. You can see this model has a tropical storm getting close to Hawaii, very close. And then it has another tropical storm behind that. So all these models have at least 2 tropical storms in that area, which is interesting to see. You can see the Northern has this system, and this is the first model that doesn't really have another storm behind it, which is interesting considering all the other models have that second tropical storm coming through. Now here's the icon. You can see it has this system, and then it has that other system behind it. So this also shows the second system. We're probably going to have to mark that eventually. And then here's a JMA. And as you can see, it does have this system moving more to the northwest, which would be bad for Hawaii. But this seems just to be an outlier. Now we're going to switch regions to the eastern Pacific, where we also have the other system. So here's the Euro for the eastern Pacific system. You can see it developing there. And it has this becoming a potential tropical storm briefly there. Next, let's look at the GFS. Yeah, the GFS has that becoming a potential major hurricane. And then another one behind it, and then another one behind that. So, we're gonna see if other models agree with the GFS on this. But that could potentially bring some tropical storm force winds to parts of the coast of Mexico there. And now we're going to look at the CMC, which has this system being a hurricane, then another system behind that. So at least the CMC agrees that there will be another system. Now looking at the nav gem, you can see this system developing, and I don't think this shows another system though, which we'll see if the icon shows the second system. So here's the icon. Everything goes at 120 hours, so I don't think that goes far enough out to show the second system. And then here's the JMA. Now we're going to go back to the Euro, but this time we're going to the tropical Atlantic. So you can see we have the potential for a tropical storm there, well east of any landmass, but that looks like it develops quite quickly. It develops very quickly there, it like wraps up super fast. You can see this is 111 hours out, and that's 144. So within less than like 1.5 days, it goes from like an inverse to a tropical storm, which isn't impossible, but that is relatively fast. Now we're looking at the GFS. The GFS also has that system a little farther south, and actually has it becoming potentially a hurricane making landfall in the Greater Antilles there. Now we don't know if that's actually going to happen, but if that does happen, that would be bad. Now looking at the CMC, it also has this system briefly, but it looks like it doesn't really form because there's two low pressure systems, and I think we're just too close to each other in the model. Now this does not really have that system developing either, which is interesting because half of the models do and half of the models don't. Now the icon does have this system at least, and this has it most likely an inverse or tropical depression by 120 hours out. And then here's the JMA. Nothing, because it only goes 72 hours out. So that's all I have for today's video. Some potentially significant to catastrophic flooding later today across portions of northeastern Kansas and northwestern Missouri, and the potential for severe weather across much of the United States over the next few days, and the potential for a few tropical storms or even hurricanes to develop over the next couple of weeks. Goodbye.